Hola, Happy New Year, ¿qué tal? My name is Meg James, I'm your Move to Spain coach, and Feliz Año Nuevo, it is 2025. So hard to believe that we're here with a new year. And so you may be hearing some noise in the background. I have the dishwasher going, I have the washer going, all things fresh and to restart for the day. And so love that New Year's feeling. I hope you and your family are gonna have a wonderful new year and had a great 2024 as well. You may notice something else different here in this channel too, and that is new smile. And so I am a partner with the Spanish company Weekend Smile, who helped me get a new smile in the end of 2024. I had some dental issues for years and decades back in the US, and they've helped me with new veneers. And so you're gonna be seeing a new look here also as we get into the new year. And so today's topic is a spicy one. We are going to talk all about finances. Long-term, short-term, does it look different now that we've moved from the US to Spain? Follow along to see. I love having an Instagram community. Many of you from here are a part of that. I have almost 55,000 going into 2025 that ask me such good questions that I just bring them over here to YouTube so that I can address your questions directly. And so that's what I'm gonna do today, is just answer the questions that you have about finances in Spain as an American family living here. I'm just gonna be very honest about some things. And so it may catch you off guard if I give you statistics or numbers or things that sound a little personal. I'm doing this just to be very vulnerable, to be able to share without a filter, really, and just to tell you our family's personal situation. So really high level, let me begin and say, I am very aware that we are blessed to be on an American salary in Spain. In fact, one of the first things that I tell families when they're finding out how they're gonna move to Spain and on what job, I always say, the cheat code, or really the best way to set yourself up for financial success, is to try to make a US income while living in Spain. And so the truth of the matter, and this isn't something that I'm making up or saying, this is just factual, Spain's salaries are significantly lower than salaries in the US for equivalent jobs. My husband works as a contractor for a US company at a London company, and even in similar roles that he did in the US, the salaries are much lower in the UK as well. And so it is widely and worldwide known that US salaries are higher than that of other competing nations. And so I want to set you up with the tools for success. And I want to tell you what our family is doing as far as savings, long-term, short-term, and what that looks like in this season of no longer getting a US bonus and things that my husband did as part of a US corporate salary. So my husband worked for 15 years in corporate America. He finished as an IT executive. He worked at the same company for 15 years. We used to get like a $30,000 bonus, sometimes less, sometimes more. And by that money, we also had a 401k match. So his company would contribute and we would have long-term savings through the contribution. We had stock options that we could sell. And so we really did walk away from more financial opportunity with the US company. Now, that was lacking some of these opportunities for adventure and for cultural experience and immersion and things that don't have a price tag or a value. And so we're still happy that we walked away from them, but we're saving in a different way now than we did in the US. In the US, we were a little more long-term focused with a 401k IRA type contribution. And we were more focused, as I said, in stock. We were more focused on the boys' educational long-term plans. And we never had because we originally lived in Florida, like a Florida prepaid kind of college account. Instead, we just have an account that helps us put money aside for the boys for college. But we've just started focusing our savings and long-term initiatives in different ways. And so your questions are going to lead me to answer most of the ways of which we're saving. And so let's just jump right in and just talk about how we're saving now that we live in Spain instead of the US. Okay, so the first question is, can you deduct 401k or IRA contributions from your taxable income in Spain? I've shared this in past episodes, but one of the most important things you can do, and I'm linking in this video, is have a tax consultation before you even consider moving to Spain, because the amount of tax that you may be assessed on is a game changer, and it may actually have you choose to not move to Spain. So make sure you do that first. Second, we are not currently contributing any more to 401k or our IRAs. They're just sitting there in the US untouched. We are not taking money from them. And so we are not, we're not having to worry about those contributions because we're not using them. And so that's another huge tip. You never want to have to use like a 401k or a long-term savings to be able to live in Spain, because that could then become tax deductible income here in Spain. So be careful of tapping into any of those IRAs or 401ks in order to move abroad to Spain. Someone said, do you know if you forfeit a pension plan if you move out of the US? And I don't know anything about that. And so maybe in the comments, if you're someone who's either worked in like law enforcement or as a teacher and you had a pension or some kind of government salary, maybe military, let me know in the comments if you move abroad, how that works. Obviously, I know many people living abroad in Germany or the Netherlands or wherever they live in working for the military, but I don't know how that works for their pension plans. That's a really good question to answer in the comments. The next thing is part of your plan to be able to receive some sort of Spanish retirement? And the answer is no. So we are trying our hardest to actually remain as much on the US side of the tax spectrum than Spanish side. Now, of course, we've lived here more than 183 days in 2024. We're planning to do the same in 2025. And so we are happy to pay our equitable fair share of taxes to Spain. However, Spain taxes way heavier than the US does. So as an example, Spain could tax around 36-37% of our taxable income. That includes having no Spanish connection and 3 US companies that we own. So that's really heavy. In comparison, in that same income bracket, it's probably about 22% in the US. So we're looking at a substantial increase. So no, we are trying to switch visa types. So we're going from the digital nomad to the volunteer visa, which I'll talk about in a future episode. We are trying to show that we are here to serve a school, which we are. We're here for an American International Christian School as volunteers in addition to our work. And we are trying to stay as little as tax residents as possible. And linking here at the below area, the same contact that helps us with taxes helps us with these visa changes. And so if you are in doubt and unsure of what type of visa you should get for tax purposes, you have to get a consultation call in 2025. It's the first thing you should do. The next question is, so how did you get that visa with the church? So ours is through a school, not a church, but it is a Christian school. And I've shared about this in past episodes. If you go to one of my first episodes, it was the volunteer visa. Volunteer visa is not talked about enough. It's kind of a cheat code when it comes to visa living and taxes and just really being able to come comfortably into Spain and not being assessed with such a heavy tax, because you're contributing something to Spanish society beyond just living here and being, more than a tourist, someone who lives here. You are actually helping build up a school or a library or an organization or a nonprofit in their country. And so there are benefits to that. And so be sure to look into the volunteer visa. The way I did it is I just contacted the school. It was through the ACSI, the Association of Christian Schools International Network, of which our school was in the US as well. And I just simply called them and said, hey, any chance you want to have a volunteer come help and a new family enroll at the school? And it was a yes. And so it can't hurt to ask, right? Because they could really honestly say yes and it could help. So someone said, what advice would you give a family who's starting from zero? Sometimes they just feel so behind. And I completely understand this. And I just want to be very empathetic and say, I am very aware that it is expensive to travel in general, even travel in your own state. It's expensive to go to a new country. It's expensive to book airfare. It's expensive to move abroad. It's expensive to, set up a new apartment in a different country. I mean, it is very expensive, and I want to be aware of that and very grateful for that. And so I hear what you're saying. What I recommend doing is always setting aside money for these needs. And so we just set out today our 2025 financial goals. So if you haven't done that this year and it's the first day, it's a great day and new opportunity to start and working on your goals. I know exactly the amount of money that I might be taking out of one of our savings accounts. I know the exact amount of money that is in my husband's non-touchable that we're not using contributions from, but 401k. I know the exact amount that's in the education funds that we're saving aside, whether our boys go to college in the US or Europe or wherever they go. So it's not really an education fund in the US. It's just kind of like a money put aside that we're not touching until they're 18. We have an life insurance policy for both of us that I know exactly how much we contribute. I know exactly how much my husband is putting aside on his contract work for us to save if he has a month where he's not working. And so really, this is possible for anyone with a good plan. When they rent their home, that is the golden ticket to move abroad, is renting your home, because for us, that covers our US mortgage and our rental here in Madrid, Spain. So rent your home, have a solid financial plan, and stick to it. Credit card points for Americans is a great way to bring in income to cover flight costs. I'm using it to cover our rental car in Iceland. I'm using it, we go to Monte Carlo, Monaco tomorrow. I'm using it to cover the cost of one night hotel. Look at ways that you can creatively set money aside for travel, and it could make a big difference. Okay, continuing on. So someone asked, are we also investing? And the answer is no. What we're doing in this season is a little less forward term thinking than we did in the US. I think in the US with that 401k and especially the boys, more contributions to the boys' education accounts, we were always thinking a little bit more about the future. Now we're kind of living a little bit more in the moment. It doesn't mean that we're recklessly living and living beyond our means. We're staying within a budget, but we're focusing less on long-term savings. So we have a goal, like for example, my goal this year is to have $50,000 in a certain account saved, set aside that I don't touch, just to have for emergencies. Another example is we sold our car, actually 2 of them, when we moved from the US to Spain, and I put the funds for one of those car sales just in an account. So I have $40,000 for a car sale sitting in one account. So if it's time for us to move back to the US or move somewhere else and we need to buy a car, we have those funds sitting right there. And so a lot of this is investing, but more in a short-term capacity. So investing in, knowing that I have the money for the car, knowing that I have a short-term plan for the boys' education spending monthly, knowing I have kind of a short-term plan to at least cover our mortgage in the US by renting our home. We're thinking shorter term than longer term, so we're not really doing investments, so to speak, but it's working for us in this season. And the next question is, so how much would we need approximately to move to Spain? And that's so hard to say because it also differs by area. Like I already shared that we lived for a month in Tenerife in the Canary Islands. And I thought that would be so much more expensive than Madrid, but we actually find that living in Madrid is much more expensive than the Canary Islands. So if you're looking at Valencia, say, that may be cheaper than living in Madrid. Or if you're living in the suburbs of Valencia, that would be less expensive than moving to the city of Valencia. And so there is a lot of different factors, but I'll just be very forthright and share the expenses that we have that are reoccurring. So in Madrid, we pay $2,500 to rent our apartment monthly. We also pay about $600 a month to lease a car here. That includes insurance and maintenance and everything, the whole package with that. We also have a tax accountant in the US that we pay monthly. We give contributions to missionaries like the Fosters in Honduras and our church here in Madrid monthly. So once I add all those up, I know, okay, well, I only have this month about $3,000 to put on the credit card. Let's just say $3,500, whatever it may be. Then I know I have that for any additional expenses, food, gas. Utilities are very small in Spain. I'm talking like $30 here, $20 there, and so that's just less of a factor for us. I've shared this before, but our private Christian school here in Spain, the total for 2 people to go is around $16,000 US. In the US, that same network school, but in South Carolina, would be $35,000 for 2. And so that's an example of an area that we've saved a lot of money on. So how much you have to put aside is such a personal question, and I'm not sure I could answer it, but I would start a budget. I love a budget. I actually have a physical planner. I may show you at the end here. I just love that physical New Year planner with the agenda, with a budget category, and it really can help you have a fresh outlook, putting everything on old-fashioned paper and making a plan for your future for the year. Okay, so similarly speaking, how much would you need to make each month to comfortably live in Spain? That would depend too on so many factors. But, for us, we are able, and going back to kind of the investing question, we are able to put a half of my husband's income on the contracts that he's on as a consultant away in an account so that if he's not working, like let's just say his project ends in August that he's working on, and he doesn't get another project till September, we have a fund that we can draw from that month in order for our expenses. And so I would say, comfortably speaking, after rent and gas and food and utilities, which are minor, and just expenses of being in football and car rentals, if that's a factor, the things, you would want to at least be able to cover $4,000 to $5,000 a month is what I would guess. But again, that just depends so much on the amount that you're able to bring in and also the area that you're living in and how you're living. Our family lives pretty frugally, despite whether we needed to or not, to be honest. We just always, regardless of our situation, if we needed something, we bought it, but we didn't just buy something because we wanted it or we saw it and it was shiny and new. One of the ways that we have been able to move abroad and to do what we're doing is because we invested in things that mattered. We bought things that we needed. We put money aside when we didn't need the whole check. We put it the other away in savings. And so I think to get to the point of being able to take this jump, you need to be comfortable knowing that you're gonna have to have a goose egg of money put aside in savings or equity in something, like in a car that you're renting in the US or a house. You have to have something that you know is coming in monthly. The next question is, your reality is really far from what the typical family lives through, and I want you to address that. So this is probably the number one comment that I receive, and so I'm not ignoring it, I'm happy to address it. Like I said in the beginning, I am very aware that Spanish income and salaries are not as much at all as American salaries. So living out of the US with an American salary is a cheat code, and I completely understand that. However, one story that I always share that just helps me show how the playing field can be a little more even than you think is we live in Valdebebas. It's an area near the airport and near La Moraleja, which is a more expensive area of Madrid suburbs. And I always share how we have 2 apartments open in our complex. And I actually saw both of them actually, for a family that is moving from the US to Spain who is Spanish. And when I'm looking at the apartment, I'm seeing how much it's listed for. And it's listed for $2,500, the same that we pay. And the people that make up our building complex is actually any single background besides American. So there are people who are from Spain, mostly who are native Spain, Venezuela. There's people from Argentina that live here. There are families from China. There are families from the Middle East. It's a very diverse layout of people that live here. But the funny thing to me is that it's not just a bunch of Americans who can afford the rent. It's actually Spanish people are the majority that can afford exactly what we're paying. And so I think gentrification, or kind of the process of raising the price on a building or rent because Americans or tourists are coming in and raising it and renting it out as Airbnbs and charging double and kicking people out. I mean, I think all of that is awful. But commenters have mentioned on my page that happens in New York City, that happens in Chicago. That's kind of, unfortunately, more of a worldwide issue. And so for me, we rent from a Spanish owner. We pay the same that Spanish locals are paying. We love our community and neighborhood and actually feel very welcome at our urba here. And I just feel good knowing that we're supporting this wonderfully sweet Spanish owner. He's been a gem, which you hear horror stories of renting from someone local and that they may not rent to you if you're American. We've had nothing but an amazing experience. And so I hear you when you say that having an American income or having 3 US businesses is a cheat code, but it wasn't just handed to us and we had to work to it. And so I just think that's really important for everyone to know. I've answered all the questions that you've had about saving and putting money aside today. And I want to make sure you hear that we are so grateful for the opportunity to live in the nations for this season, for however long it is that it's on our hearts or that the Lord wills for us to live here. And we have felt nothing but welcome. I shared in the past, especially on Instagram, that there are, especially like in cities like Barcelona, there are signs that say go home tourist, or like this comment that I mentioned previously about gentrification. People can sometimes feel unwelcome. There were actually news articles in the US about people throwing tomatoes and water gun shooting Americans for going to Barcelona as tourists. And I just want to say from my personal experience, having lived now in our 2nd year here in Madrid, Spain, we have felt nothing but welcome in our community, in our urba, online, in really any circle, at the gym, at our school that we go to. Even though our school's an American school, we're one of the only 3 American families represented. Everyone else is pretty much local Spanish or from a Spanish-speaking nation that now calls Spain home. And so we feel very welcome. We try to support local as much as possible. If someone contacts me and has a Spanish business, I will go out of my way to promote it. I love the ability to help others make a living, but I'm not going to be embarrassed of the income that we've made, okay? And so I want to share that with grace and say that we shouldn't be penalized for working hard. I feel that way about Americans. I feel that way about people in Spain, around the world, that you too can set a budget. You can put equity into a home and begin to rent it. You can do a startup. There are a million ways that if you feel stuck, You have the ticket through prayer, through freelancing, through dreaming up an idea and starting it and just taking action. The secret behind you moving abroad might be right at your fingertips. And so I just want to encourage you that with this new year, this new start. I thank you for your questions, and I don't mind sharing and getting more intimate with the details. And if you have any additional questions, ask me in the comments, but you can do this too. Puedes. Ciao. Just a minute for my new agenda book for 2025, because I think people mostly do things online now, but I just can't do it. And this is the cutest Spanish agenda book I've ever seen in my whole life. And so if you are someone who needs a little, nudging to get an agenda book and to put down your budgeting goals, to put down your ideas for a company that you want to start in the new year, maybe you have some travel plans and you need to work towards how you can afford them. I love paper, so write it down, because if you text yourself or something, you can delete it, but here it's here to stay. And so I just want to wish that over you all in your new year. As a reminder, there are several ways that we can stay connected after this call. I'm going to link below the course that I'm offering now with $10 off. That also is just a great way to learn more about moving abroad to Spain. We can also hop on the phone on a coaching call one-on-one and learn more about your family situation. And I have lots of other links to help you have success moving abroad. So if you ever need anything, just holler.